What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 17. Sleepers and studs. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to give you a sleeper pick and my favorite stud at each position. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 17. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my quarterback stud, I like Justin Fields, but I also like Justin Herbert from the LA Chargers, playing the LA Rams, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing quarterbacks, but Justin Herbert has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He's getting an average of 3.4 rush attempts per game. He's only going to be about 4% owned, projected at 19.2 fantasy points here in Week 17. He's 7,100 DraftKings salary, 1,000 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 42.5 points scored in this game, with the Chargers favored by 6.5. So Justin Herbert scored 8, 14, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 5, 1, and 4 rush attempts in those games. So not a good game last week for Justin Herbert. And I do think this is a good bounce back spot, even though it's not a great matchup. I also noticed that Austin Eckler was questionable, limited in practice. So it's possible that they lean on the passing game here this week. So I do think it's a good bounce back game. I think he can score 20 fantasy points or more in this one. So I like Justin Herbert here versus the LA Rams. Okay, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Bucks, playing the Carolina Panthers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Tom Brady has averaged 16.8 fantasy points per game on the season, gets an average of 1.7 rush attempts per game. He's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 16.9 fantasy points here this week. He's 6,100 DraftKings salary, 1,100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Bucks favored by 3. So Tom Brady has scored 13, 24, and 12 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 2 rush attempts in each of those games. So you got a decent matchup here versus the Panthers. Tom Brady seems to be off and on. He'll have a good game. He'll have a bad game, a good game, a bad game. So coming off of a week last week where he only scored 13 fantasy points. So I like Tom Brady here versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. Lots of questionable running backs here in Week 17. Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, James Conner, all guys that I would really like to play, all of them questionable. So keep an eye on the injury news there. But some guy that's healthy, good to go with a good matchup. Price tag looks pretty low. I like, or my top DFS pick, or my running back stud is Saquon Barkley from the New York Giants, playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Saquon Barkley has averaged 19.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 18.9 rush attempts per game, 4.8 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 80% of the snaps, gonna be about 15% owned, projected at 17.3 fantasy points here in week 17. He's 8,000 DraftKings salary, 1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 38.5 points scored in this game, with the Giants favored by 5.5. So Saquon Barkley has scored 27, 23, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 14, 18, and 9 rush attempts in those games, on top of 10, 8, and 2 pass targets. So pretty big volume the past 2 weeks, well over 20 touches, and he's averaging over 20 touches a game. Now it's a great matchup, and I do think he's underpriced. I think he could be priced $8,500 or more, and you're getting him at only 8,000 DraftKings salary. So I like Saquon Barkley here versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, my sleeper pick at the running back position is Cam Akers from the LA Rams, playing the LA Chargers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, but they give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Cam Akers, now he's only averaged 8.9 fantasy points per game on the season. He gets an average of 11.4 rush attempts per game, 1 pass target per game, but that volume has spiked up quite a bit the past 3 weeks, but particularly last week, where that volume has more than doubled, and Cam Akers is only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 12.2 fantasy points here in week 17. He's 6,100 DraftKings salary, 1,100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 42.5 points scored in this game, with the Rams trailing by 6.5. So Cam Akers has scored 38, 13, and 10 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 23, 12, and 12 rush attempts, on top of 2, 3, and 1 pass target. So he's got a fantastic matchup, coming off of a game that he got 25 touches and scored 38 fantasy points. So I think this could be a really good sleeper pick here, especially if he's going to get 20 plus touches in this matchup this week. So I like Cam Akers here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My wide receiver stud is Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions, playing the Chicago Bears, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing wide receivers. Actually, they have the 11th worst defense overall and give up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So a little bit worse than middle of the pack there. And Amon-Ra St. Brown has averaged 18.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9.4 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 77% of the snaps, gonna be about 26% owned, projected at 19.8 fantasy points here in week 17. He's 7,800 DraftKings salary, 1,400 more on FanDuel, and Amon-Ra St. Brown has scored 15, 15, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 13, 10, and 9 pass targets on top of 1 rush attempt in each of those games. So he's got a pretty good matchup here. Oh, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 52 points scored in this game, with the Lions favored by 6. So you got a high scoring game. Salary's still pretty reasonable. I know the ownership is up there, but I do like this play quite a bit. So I like Amon-Ra St. Brown here versus the Chicago Bears.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders, playing the Cleveland Browns, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing wide receivers, but Jahan Dotson has averaged 11.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 78% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 10.9 fantasy points here this week. He's only $4,600 DraftKings salary, $1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Washington Commanders favored by 2. So Jahan Dotson has scored 20, 24, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 9, 6, and 9 pass targets. So nice volume here over the last 3 games and awesome production, low price tag, super low ownership. So I like Jahan Dotson as a sleeper pick here versus the Cleveland Browns. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I like Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs, playing the Denver Broncos, who have a good defense overall. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Travis Kelce has averaged 21 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 80% of the snaps, gonna be about 13% owned, projected at 17.7 fantasy points here this week. He's $8,100 DraftKings salary, only $200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's gonna be 45 points scored in this game, with the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 12. So Travis Kelce has scored 20, 24, and 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 10, and 9 pass targets. Good matchup here, although I do think he's a little bit overpriced. I like Travis Kelce here versus the Denver Broncos. So other low price studs that you could look at, George Kittle has played really well the last 2 weeks. TJ Hawkinson scored 39 fantasy points last week off of 16 pass targets. So those are a couple studs I like as well. But my sleeper pick at the tight end position is Darren Waller from the Las Vegas Raiders, playing the San Francisco 49ers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing tight ends. Darren Waller was out most of the season, but the games that he did play, he averaged 9 fantasy points off of 4.6 pass targets per game. And he's been on the field for 88% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 8 fantasy points here this week. He's only $4,300 DraftKings salary, $1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 41.5 points scored in this game, with the Raiders trailing by 9.5. So although it's not a good matchup, it could be a good game script. And Darren Waller scored 10 and 14 fantasy points in the last 2 games off of 5 and 3 pass targets. So I'm hoping he can get at least a handful of pass targets here this week. So I like Darren Waller here versus the San Francisco 49ers.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.